Hey everyone, welcome back to another advanced sports analytics application tutorial. Or not really tutorial, but just a use case video to help you guys get a sense of maybe ways in which our tools can be used for your DFS strategy. Today, we're going to be looking at the quick slant projection tool that we just debuted today here on kickoff night, Thursday in the NFL. Specifically looking at it in the context of Showdown lineup construction, since that's the game we're playing tonight. But a lot of the applications and kind of keystrokes that you would use for Showdown obviously can apply for classic contest or lineup construction. But for this use case, we're just going to be looking at maybe ways you can use the tool for Showdown. I think the goal is for it to be equal parts tutorial and kind of understanding of how to use the tool, but also just provide some fodder or thought for maybe how you might be able to use the tool to optimize your Showdown construction strategy. So going to try to keep it quick, focusing tonight on Kansas City versus Houston in the opening night of NFL action. So we're going to select the teams and the team input, select our site. We'll look at DK just for this example, but really same applications apply for FanDuel. And then the format, we're playing Showdown. Really important to align the teams with the format. So if you select Kansas City and Houston in Classic, you won't be able to generate projections and optimal lineups. We have to select Showdown. We provide some information about the weather. So for tonight, it's supposed to be cool, very humid, and mildly windy in Kansas City. And game macros tab, where we provide Vegas over, under, and spread for the game. And the player inputs tab, where we have just some information about variables that we're going to predict on. Players' projected rush market share, efficiency per rush or per pass in the case of quarterbacks, sack percentage, which is going to carry through to quarterback and defensive projections. And then there's projections for, inputs for really all four non-defense or kicker positions. So running back, projected market share of rushes, targets, projected snap percentage, some efficiency stuff, fantasy points per rush or target, targets per snap, wide receiver, some similar stuff, but with a projection for air yards. Thinking really is that for running backs, air yards don't come into come into play in a huge way. There's a lot of running backs collecting either zero or negative air yards just by kind of virtue of the position. And then tight end, more or less similar stuff to wide receiver. And we, through predictive modeling and some manual massaging of projections, generate these efficiency and volume projections. But if you want to go back in and make edits to some of these projections on your own, you can do so. So like we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire predicted for a 64% market share, but if we wanted to go and bump him up to, I don't know, like 78 or something like that, we double click, you double click the number that you want to edit, or really any of the cells that you can edit. So double click, then it's going to open up text input, and then you can make your edit. And then, so that's if we wanted to edit like his market share, but let's say we want to like downgrade his target market share and maybe assume that, I don't know, like Darrell Williams will get more of Kansas City's running back targets, but Edwards-Helaire will get more of Kansas City's rushing opportunity. So we'll downgrade him to like, I don't know, 13%. And then we can lock by hitting Control Return. That's Control Return on a Mac, and I think users have said it's the same keystrokes on PC. So, oh yes, you can see on the hover box it says hit Control plus Enter to finish editing, or Escape to exit. And then we can make our edits to, projected volume or efficiency, stuff like that, and that'll carry through to our projections, which we can view either as positionless by looking at all players, predicted fantasy points, and a value function that we calculate, or position by position, to identify kind of how players compare to their positional counterparts. I'm going to skip ahead just to the optimals tab, just to show kind of the basic output that you're getting, and you can specify how many optimals you want, and it'll just generate a list of optimals sorted on projected fantasy points. Yeah, that's just super useful way to look at kind of what players are bubbling to the top. You can look at, oh, looks like that one's not quite working, so we'll fix that up. But ideally, the exposure tab will just show you the exposure you have to all the different players. So you can get a sense of kind of what players are fitting into the majority or minority or none of your optimals. The next tab, I think that's super useful, for Showdown or classic contests, is our groups and rules tab, where you can specify rules for players. Like, let's say in this contest, you wanted to only play one quarterback, not two, for salary saving purposes. You could type in like max one or less than or equal to one of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, and all of a sudden you'll see your lineups generate with this rule in mind. Or let's say you, I don't know, just I think a good general rule, maybe, maybe not place running backs on the same team. So like max one of Duke Johnson and David Johnson. And we will see no lineups generated with those two in it. Conversely, let's say you wanted to lock in both quarterbacks. You could set this to Mahomes plus Watson is equal to 2. And now all of a sudden you'll see all your lineups with both Mahomes and Watson. So useful way for grouping players. So yeah, that's also good. We're going to go back to max one. And you can also do some cool stacking specification in the rules sidebar tab. So let's say we're doing, max one quarterback, and we want to make sure that that quarterback is paired with at least 3 receiving options from their offense. We can lock in that, just go back to show. Locking in QB plus own wide receiver tight end. So we want QB plus 3 of his own wide receivers or tight ends. And then we can see, so we have Mahomes plus Robinson, Watkins, and Tyreek Hill. And, let's say we instead wanted to go 2 and make sure we're bringing back at least 2 wide receivers and tight ends on the other side. We can lock that rule in, and now we can see we have Watson plus Cooks, Fuller plus Cobb, so it's at least 2, so we're getting 3 Houston receivers. And then we also have 2 Kansas City receiving options coming back. Maybe we're expecting like a super high scoring shootout and just want a lot of exposure to points scored through the air. So yeah, useful features I think to use here as you're building lineups on kind of player and positional construction and player grouping. I think is a good portion of the tool to consider. Just going to refresh the tool. Let's kind of go back to our default projections. So we'll plug back in Houston and Kansas City. Showdown. Generating our optimals, great. There's also some kind of lineup tweaking we can do in the optimals tab. The optimization program is going to attempt to use all of the salaries, so 50,000 on DraftKings or 60 on FanDuel. However, I know there's like a common Showdown or just even classic strategy of not using the full 50, trying to leave a decent chunk on the table to promote lineup uniqueness. So if you did want to coerce builds to max out at a certain salary, you can do so here. So like, let's just max out at 4,900. You'll see that we're not going to build any lineups that exceed that cumulative salary. So really useful tool if you're kind of trying to get unique and leave salary on the table intentionally for the purpose of uniqueness. There's also some really cool things you can do with specifying, particularly in Showdown. Like, I think it's really useful to have a lot of control over what team you're captaining or the build that you're using, whether you want to go with an even like 3-3 build or go with a 5-1 onslaught. Maybe you want to have control over what position you captain. You can do that in the optimals tab. So like, let's, for example, say we wanted to go through the process of building a team or building a set of lineups that is well suited for a Kansas City onslaught. We want to go 5-1 Kansas City players versus 1 Houston player. And we want to really optimize towards that build. I think a good place to start is really just let's update our game macros to reflect a game script that might warrant that type of build. So rather than 54 and Kansas City is already a solid nearly 10-point favorite, maybe we want to like juice it up to 63 and just projecting huge numbers in which Kansas City just has a huge game, and maybe their spread is more like 16 or something like that. So plus 16 on the Houston side, minus 16 on the Kansas City side, and then we're going to lock that in with Control Enter, and we can see that stuff is saved, and it's going to carry through to our projections. So we'll see, like in a blowout Kansas City game, Edwards-Helaire is gonna boost up a little bit. Mahomes is gonna boost up a little bit. So yeah, good to kind of keep that in mind. Now, let's say we wanted to avoid captaining any quarterbacks and really just wanted to focus on either running backs or wide receivers at the captain position. We could do so in the captain position input and specify, all right, great. So now we only are using running back and wide receiver captains. You can see that carry through to our optimal lineups. And building with that Kansas City onslaught, let's maybe coerce the optimizer to use only Kansas City captains. Okay, great. And now we can see all of a sudden our lineups are optimized only with Kansas City skill player, or let's see, I guess Kelsey's a strong play, so maybe we want to build lineups where Kansas City tight ends can be a part of the captain player pool. And we also want to do a hard 5-1 Kansas City stack. So we're going to do our primary stack team as Kansas City and set that to 5. And great. So now we're starting to look at all of our lineups, and we can see we're building lineups with 5 Kansas City players and then 1 Houston player, Kansas City skill player in the captain slot. So I'm looking through these, and like a couple of things are jumping out to me that maybe I want to avoid doing. And let's also set our max salary to 4,900. Seeing a lot of Chiefs defense in flex slots. So maybe we want to avoid any sort of DST players in our builds. We can type in a player to full fade, and all of a sudden, we now have our builds where there's no Chiefs players. I guess we could have room. There's room in the optimizer to have 5 Kansas City players versus a Houston defense, although it seems highly unlikely if we're projecting so many points through our game macros tab for Kansas City that's probably not going to be super favorable for Houston defense. So not surprising that they're not finding their way in there, but I'm going to remove that. I mean, I do think, if in a Kansas City onslaught, there is room for the Chiefs defense, to just get a ton of pressure on the quarterback, maybe generating some turnovers, converting some into a touchdown, stuff like that. So I don't think, it's unreasonable to keep Kansas City defense in there. Another thing I'm just looking at is seeing a decent amount of Darrell Williams in the captain spot. And maybe we just want to make, the captain spot reserved for players that we think have kind of high touchdown upside. And, with the assumption that Darrell Williams is going to kind of be in a backup role, even though he's a good value per price, as sorting by value would show, he just really doesn't have like that high of a scoring ceiling, and maybe we want to avoid captaining him. Um, we could do a fade here on Darrell Williams in the captain role. Um, and that will remove him from the captain pool. And now we can look at our 20 lineups, and they have these kind of 5-1 Kansas City stacks with skill players in the captain slot, and really forcing captain to be, looks like a pretty good mix of like CEH, Hill, and Kelsey, maybe some McCall Hardman. So kind of avoiding like a valuable but not super high ceiling player like Darrell Williams, and also keeping salary under 4,900. So we kind of like the uniqueness of our lineups. And we can just download these right out to a CSV if we wanted to do a bulk upload on DraftKings. And you can just press the download button, and you will be presented with a CSV that just has the players with their IDs, in uploadable form to make it super easy for multi-entering optimal lineups. So that, I hope, gives you a good sense of kind of how to use the quick slant projection tool. Been working hard on it in the off season, and hope you guys will enjoy it. It's going to be free tonight for the Showdown slate. But if you like the projections, or you like the functionality of it, feel free to sign up for an ASA membership, and you'll have access to that through the remainder of the regular season starting on Sunday. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good season. Hope you enjoy the tool, and if you have any issues or recommendations for features you'd like to see added to the tool, feel free to reach out to us either by email or Twitter, and we'd be happy to help you troubleshoot or consider some feature improvements that you guys might like to see.